Welcome to Profits on Purpose, which is a podcast for ecom and CPG founders who are looking to scale their businesses both profitably and purposefully. I'm your host, Nate Littlewood from Future Ready CFO, which is the go-to fractional CFO solution for seven-figure founders who are looking to turn financial chaos and confusion into clarity and confidence. Today's guest is Teddy Oitzman, who is the founder of Simply Trees. And today's conversation, I have a suspicion, is going to be a masterclass in how to hustle as a founder. At just 25 years old, with basically zero nursery experience, Teddy watched Plants Express burn through about $15 million. And at some point along the way, thought to himself, you know what, I think I can do this better. He had no idea how to keep plants alive, no idea how to ship them, and was doing an accounting on a cash basis because at that point, he didn't yet understand accrual. But he figured it out and generated an amazing $3.5 million in his first year of operation. That involved driving around trucks to pick up plants. He was hand watering plants in his 2,000 square foot warehouse, cold calling landscapers at midnight just so he could cover the bills. And at one point lost over $50,000 when the irrigation system on his friend's farm stopped working. Today, Simply Trees operates on 25 acres with sophisticated systems and multi-million-dollar revenue. The gap between I don't know anything and building a real business, as you're going to hear about today, it is pure hustle. Teddy, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, Teddy, I don't know if you realize this, but the other day when we chatted, it was only a brief conversation, but I think you said the phrase, I didn't know anything, at least a dozen times. During that conversation, you said to me, I don't know how to keep plants alive, or I didn't know logistics, I didn't know how to manage people, and you didn't understand accrual accounting. Most people would see that as a reason not to start a business, especially one in the plant space. What made you think that you could figure it out, and what gave you the confidence to give it a go anyway?
It's a great point you make. A lot of people might think I'm a little crazy for that, but I believe in my ability to market and generate revenue. And I think, generally speaking, that's the hardest part at the very beginning. Like, can you get sales in the door efficiently? Can you market efficiently? Can you advertise efficiently? And if you can do that, you can figure out the other pieces if you're willing to put the effort and the hours into doing so. And I knew I could teach myself or learn or call a friend who might know the answer to some of these questions that I didn't at the time. Mm-hmm. And I believe in my ability to get sales. If you need, I think, early stage startups require revenue to keep them going. And if you can, the founder specifically can achieve that or outsource it for very cheap, they're going to be in a better position. The other stuff is certainly learnable. I knew I'd either learn it or hire someone once we got going. And I was able to do that, but definitely felt out of like a bit of imposter syndrome, I would say. Like I just didn't know the answer to a lot of questions, but I felt like if we could get sales, which we did, I could figure the rest of these things out. It's not rocket science. We're not shooting satellites into space, right? We're putting plants in a box. Yeah. We're keeping them alive. And so
right.
I might have been crazy, but I felt like we could make it happen.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective, and you're so true. Sales and the ability to acquire customers is a critical skill, and a whole lot of revenue is going to cover up a whole lot of other mistakes that we might make along the way. But maybe we'll come back to that. I actually want to go backwards a step, though. And I'm realizing there's maybe a part in your story that we should have, or that I've missed here. You said that you knew how to acquire customers and you understood digital marketing. How did you acquire those skills in the first place?
It's a good question. Mostly taught myself, I would say.
Hmm.
I didn't work at an ad agency or anything. I um, I played golf in college and I dropped out of college and I moved to Los Angeles and I was like, I need to acquire skills to earn a living. And I was caddying at LA Country Club and using YouTube, and I'd buy courses online to teach me how to market and teach me how to run meta ads and Google ads. And I would pitch myself to companies and eventually some hired me and that grew to two, three, four, five companies, six companies sometimes at a time. And and through trial and error, like when you're managing five ad accounts, like you know what's working, you know what's not. And
Mm.
um, I'm a pretty fast learner, and especially in application, it's easy to learn on the job. And there's definitely, I would go as far to say there were times where I would take um, positions or consulting roles where like I definitely wasn't qualified, but I figured it out on the spot and did a good job. Um,
Mm.
and um, it's not overly complicated, right? If you have a basic understanding of finance, which is crucial in marketing, like you have to know what you can acquire customers for, and you have
Mm.
I'm somewhat interested in psychology and consumer behavior, and so that interest mixed
Mm.
with my basic understanding of finance blended
Mm.
itself into I think a pretty good skill set. Um,
Mm. Got it. Yeah, it makes sense. Well, you touched on a topic very close to my heart there, which is obviously finance. You mentioned that understanding finances is kind of critical to being able to run an ad account effectively. Uh, Tell me a little bit more about that. What do we need to know about finances to get that right?
I mean, in terms of business, I think a lot, but it's fairly basic, right? Like I mentioned to you on our first call, I didn't have a vast understanding of accrual accounting. I knew the basics of an income statement, a balance sheet, and a cash flow statement. I'd interned at an investment bank and studied finance and econ in college, which was I don't know, I don't know if I learned a lot, but I learned a little. And
Mm.
I think um, having good financial controls on a business is the most important. Um,
Mm.
Behind generating revenue, right? You need to generate revenue, but then to stay alive. But once you're alive, right, if you're breathing, you need to be able to have good financial controls in your business and know where you're making money and where you're bleeding. And I think it's critical to have a understanding on, especially for a young business that doesn't have a ton of cash in the bank, on a weekly basis, like where's your cash going and in what lumps is it coming in and what time frame, and if you can get those things under control, you should be in good shape. um, and do some sort of cash flow forecasting just so you know, okay, like I
Mm.
have this much runway, I can take this much risk in these certain areas without dying. I say dying, I mean we're going out of business, right? So
Yeah.
um, it's very important, and the larger the business gets, the more important it becomes. You're dealing with bigger numbers,
Mm.
um, and risk looks different when you have 15 employees who rely on you for
Yeah.
food, right, and for their
Yeah.
families, and so it feels like quite a responsibility. And so
Hmm.
um, I I've since like hired some great people and learned a lot through the people I've hired as well in terms of finance and the implications of certain KPIs, and you know we can get into that a bit later, but it's very
Hmm.
important.
Okay. Cool. Sounds good. Well, I would love to talk a little bit more about the business that you have found yourself running because it's really, really interesting in a number of ways. And, for context here, most of the founders that I work with as a fractional CFO are basically purchasing their finished goods from suppliers. And, they might have a bit of a bump through the holiday season, but usually things are somewhat constant throughout the year. I think it's really, really important that listeners kind of understand just how different your business is to that, right? Like you have got seasonality to worry about. You have, I presume, some pretty significant challenges around, supply chain, procurement, maybe inventory shrinkage as well. I'm not sure. Could you just expand on that a little bit and tell us about some of the logistical and back end challenges that you deal with as a guy who is shipping plants?
Sure. It's a great question. Um, Plants, like you mentioned, are not like a manufactured good. You can't just send in a purchase order to a vendor and have it show up in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever. They take a while to grow. Sometimes smaller plants, 7 to 10 months, and the trees we sell that are 6 feet, 7 feet tall, those are, years. And there's only so many of them in the U.S. at one time.
Mm.
And Home Depot and Lowe's has their arm around a large portion of those trees. Um,
Okay.
and it's logistically daunting, quite frankly. The seasonality aspect is also challenging, right? 50% of our revenue is in the spring, March, April, May. Um, and June's not crazy slow, but the remaining 9 months make up the rest of the revenue for the year. And you have to carry fixed costs through the rest of the year. I mean, and direct labor is a small percentage of our costs, but which would be like, labor to pack and ship plants outside of office staff. But you're carrying that labor for far longer than 9 months, right? Whether it be visa guys
Yeah.
you bring in or whatever. Um, and these are things I didn't know before I got into this industry. I mean, I had an idea at seasonal. I worked at Plants
Mhm.
Express. I had some concept of the seasonality. I had some concept of it being a living good. There's a pro and con to our inventory being a living good, being a tree, right? The pro, something we don't experience because our inventory turnover rate is fairly high. We turn inventory in like 30 days, but like it grows, so it appreciates in value, but it also dies if you
Interesting.
don't take care of it well, or it'll get maybe it won't die, right? But it'll get ugly. It's not like we grade our
Yeah.
inventory on like structure and foliage and these different criteria that make it, grade AA, grade A, grade B. Grade B is not sellable. And we have inventory
Mm.
even right now. It's not sellable because something happened. It got missed by irrigation. It fell over in a windstorm. We have a big farm and fell down for 4 days and it didn't get hit by sprinklers or whatever. And, you know,
Mhm.
it goes into its own like area that's basically unsellable grade, and we try to rehab it and bring it back, and sometimes we just throw it away. Shrinkage isn't like crazy in terms of the units we bring in annually. Um, for we've thrown away less than $10,000
Mhm.
of material this year, so it's
Oh,
very
wow.
marginal.
Okay.
But that being said, there's also about $20,000 on any given time of our inventory that's not sellable. 15 to
Mhm.
$20,000 inventory that's not sellable,
Okay.
which is fairly significant.
Yeah. So just to wrap all that up and paraphrase you a little bit, you've got inventory that's growing and literally changing in size. You have inventory that might be dependent on whether it gets watered, temperature, you know, the time of year. You've got inventory that might not be very healthy and it might shrink or wither away, but then you can resurrect it and bring it back again. Like, how on earth do you actually manage all that from a ERP logistics perspective? Like, what are some of the tools and systems that actually enable you to do that?
It's a good question. Um, the the short answer is trial and error, right? Like things don't work at some point, and you figure out how to make them work. But
Mm-hmm.
um, it's a few things, right? Like managing that is like managing like you have like 10,000 like I don't want to equate a plant to a child, but it's like you have 10,000 like living things like right there, like, right it's right
Mm-hmm.
outside, and
Yeah.
a lot of them are pretty easy to care for.
The,
Um,
the the more I think about this, the more my brain hurts from an accounting and inventory management perspective. All the things
yeah,
that could possibly go wrong. It's quite daunting. It's quite daunting. I think I mentioned to you
yeah.
that Eliza Blank, who's the founder of the Sill, is coming on this podcast too. I'm not sure if her episode will be just before yours or just after, but I'm recording with her on Friday.
Mhm.
Anyway, I I really respect and appreciate what you were saying earlier about learning how to acquire customers and the fact that every business has a revenue problem to solve from the outset. And you clearly figured that out pretty well, pretty early. You were doing multiple $1 million of revenue out of the gate, but it sounds like you kind of took a bit of a hey, I'll figure it out when I get there type approach in terms of the logistics, the trucks, the packing, procurement and so forth. Tell me a little bit about what was going on behind the scenes and what were some of the things that you were doing in order to keep up with this revenue that you were evidently quite successful at growing in the early days.
Yeah. Um, so to preface on this, like you mentioned before, and we touched on, it's a very seasonal business. And as a result of the seasonality of our business, I was initially at the very beginning like so scared of going into winter. I'm like, we'll run out of money. Like if demand goes down, people aren't buying plants in December, January, half November, when most of the US starts freezing, like it's hard, right? And so I was so hesitant to like hire anyone. I mean, I had some people that worked here, but not many, because of the seasonality, the nature of the seasonality of this business, in this industry. And so I took it to myself to pretty much do everything, a piece of everything. I had people helping me and working here full time, but I was 100% doing everything. I was driving a truck like with a 30-foot trailer attached to it to go pick up plants from nearby because we were doing a lot of volume. Millions of dollars in volume is like a real number, right? But like
Mhm.
that's significant volume, but we also didn't have a ton of space at the beginning to store all this inventory. So I'd like drive like 2 hours away, pick up plants at a vendor, at a grower, freight it back, drive it myself because if we freight's expensive and we bring everything in on refrigerated trailers, on semi trailers. And when you have a semi trailer that's refrigerated, it's thousands of dollars to move these trucks around. And
Mhm.
if we're not bringing in a full trailer with stuff, the freight's not worth it. So I would have to go pick it up myself.
Right.
Um, and I would pack boxes. And in our first spring, I picked up inventory. I helped pack boxes. I had helpers, but I was in the warehouse the whole time. And my helpers spoke minimal-ish English, right? They're
Mhm.
100% documented residents of the U.S., but they didn't have um, literacy skills like reading, ship stations, fulfillment software, etc. And so
Right.
um, I was in there doing fulfillment, packing boxes, setting plants out, and then I would go. That'd be from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. ish, whenever FedEx would come pick up the boxes, and then I would go sit at my desk, work on marketing, work on the accounting. Like, you know, at this time, and even now, we have so many transactions that occur on a daily basis, right? So obviously the transactions, the customers who are buying product from us, but also like all the transactions to our vendors. And when you're not buying, um, as many plants as we do now at a time, right? There's more transactions, multiple transactions with multiple vendors a day. Um,
Mhm.
so just categorizing these things in QuickBooks in the evening and, writing ad copy and writing emails and all these different things took up the evenings. And I was, working, I would say 6 or 7 days a week from 6 a.m., 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. ish. And that was for the
My
better part of
God.
a year. Um,
Wow.
and yeah, and um, it was something I wouldn't recommend, but it taught me a lot. Like I was able to learn a lot and learn about our business and how our business works better because of this. I was doing double
Mhm.
time, and so
Mhm.
I probably soaked up 2 years worth of experience in 1 year.
Mhm.
And it was it was like looking back, it was like so hard and it was fairly stressful, but like it was fun at the same time, right? Like I'm a
Right.
25, 26-year-old dude, like just doing it. And
Yeah.
they I wasn't at this time I wasn't getting paid a salary either. So it was like, okay, we're
Mhm.
like this has to work, right? And so
Yeah.
um I'm super grateful for that period of my life and that time, but it was hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's certainly a grind. Did your investment banking days prepare you for that, or is?
Um
Mhm.
but like the work ethic aspect of it, I had learned then. And um just the nature of, you know practicing to play college golf. Like the work ethic thing has been like ingrained in me since I was a little kid, and so it didn't
Yeah.
seem like it was something I couldn't do.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, I respect the hustle, but you eventually got to the point where you were comfortable in hiring some more kind of, C-suite or, corporate level people to help you. Tell me a little bit more about that transition. Like, how did you get comfortable with the reality that you weren't going to be able to do all of this yourself anymore and that you did indeed need to hire help despite the seasonality concerns that were, still present and never going away?
Yeah. It was based on a conversation really I had with a few mentors or friends of mine that were older, in their 50s, maybe early 60s, that were from various industries that had been very successful.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, a friend of mine who's a venture investor and serial entrepreneur, and he basically just said like, you're fired from driving trucks and packing boxes, like,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to hire someone who has not only operational skills but like better financial skills, as well. And your business won't grow past what it is now if you don't do that. Like, there's no
Mm-hmm.
way for you to possibly do more than what you just did the past year, without expanding your team. And I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was a very true statement because, like, I couldn't do more. It was like impossible. Like, I
Yeah.
couldn't shave
I mean,
more time
you
out
told
of the
me you
day.
had only 4 hours to sleep a day or something. You're virtually a
Mhm.
vampire at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's those conversations is what changed my mind, and I'm like, okay, like if these guys are saying so, and they've done super well, like they must be right, and
Yeah.
you know,
Uh-huh.
and so, like, okay, let's try this out. And so, we onboarded a lot more labor. I hired a guy who's incredibly intelligent. He has multiple degrees from Notre Dame. He worked at Bain. He
Mm.
has extensive experience in operations and has a finance and accounting background. And so, um, those things, we hired an agency. So I wasn't doing all the Google ads and Meta ads and everything myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that made the world of difference. Our business
Mm-hmm.
has grown tremendously since then. Um,
Yeah.
and we've become a lot more efficient, in that as
Mm-hmm.
well. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I, I think that that was a decision, like thinking back, could have I done that earlier? For sure, but I don't know if I would have, just because like I learned
Mm-hmm.
so much along the way, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something to be said for doing everything for a little while. Um,
Yeah. I'm sure it gave you a very valuable perspective on what was required in all these tasks. But you've clearly evolved since then and have come a long way. One of the things that I wanted to just circle back on though is you told me the other day that somewhat early on you had an experience where you had a whole lot of inventory and plants at your friend's farm, I think it was, and there was a time when the irrigation broke, from what I understand, and you lost at what was at the time like over half of your inventory or something. I mean,
mhm.
something like that, like losing half of that stock and inventory would break a lot of founders. How did you recover from that, both financially and mentally?
Yeah, that was a grim part of a summer we
I
had at the
bet.
beginning. Um, we lost about, I think, just over $50,000 worth of inventory, and um, I was using, at this point we didn't have our new facility, new HQ, and I didn't have all this space to store these plants at my facility, and so my friend had a big farm, and I'm like, can I irrigate some of this area and use, a couple acres? And he was like, sure, no problem. And like you mentioned, the inventory basically just broke.
Hmm.
Their well pump broke. So
Yeah.
the pump that pumps water out of the well to the irrigation broke, and
Hmm.
it happened. It was summer. It happened over a weekend, and I wasn't out there, and it just everything pretty much died. And so it was. I was sad. I was like, it was just. I didn't really have time to be sad. I was just like, damn, like this stinks. But now I'm getting orders for products that I don't own that I already paid for, which is a problem, right?
Hmm.
Like in terms of cash.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
people are buying
Yeah.
stuff from me that I don't really have right now that I've already paid for. This is a problem.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I was like, we have to, and I had, payables coming up that I would no longer have the cash for because I have to now buy this inventory for orders that are coming in. And um, so I'm like, okay, we need to make a lot of money like now, like yesterday. We have to make a lot of money, that tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
So I started
Right.
calling landscapers and landscapers that were doing bigger commercial jobs, etc. And um, fortunately, I got like 3 or 4 customers quickly. And in the period from like late July through beginning of October, we did like roughly 500, maybe $550,000 worth of revenue from just landscapers, and I think 200 of that was in the first 3 weeks, and
Wow.
so that like saved us, right? Like at some capacity. Like I don't know what the outcome would have been if that didn't happen, but it would have been grim. Like we did not have a ton
Mm.
of cash, and I personally didn't have a ton of money to like I personally couldn't like foot this, right? Like these are bills that, and I'm a fairly risk averse person financially. Like I'm not going to go throw something on a credit card that I don't have the cash to pay for it. Like that's just not me.
Right.
Um, and so my options were taking a really terrible Shopify. Shopify gives out loans. I'm sure you're aware. It's like a shop,
Hmm.
whatever. Shopify will give you a loan, terrible rates, like 9%, 10% over a 6 month period, right? So this is like 20% APR. This is not good. I could do that, or I could just like hustle and figure it out. We'll do that. It's really expensive
Hmm.
debt. And so we ended up like figuring it out and generating these wholesale like this wholesale revenue, and it like saved us. And um, it's not the side of our business that we have any intent on scaling by any means. It's not like a very scalable business model in terms of like the direct consumer shipping it. Your total addressable market is much smaller. It requires labor, trucks, trailers. You're selling big trees, right? Like you know trees that weigh 1,000 pounds a piece. So um, not as scalable, but it saved us in the interim. Um, and I think the reason we went that direction was a pivot. But I just had like I'm like my mentality was like, this isn't gonna fail. Like I'll do whatever I have to do to
Hmm.
make it happen. If I have to
Yeah.
call 10,000 people, I'll call 10,000 people. Um,
Hmm.
and so um, we were very fortunate to make that work and make that happen. But it was grim and it was stressful. But I didn't have time to like freak out. I just had to like pivot and go.
Hmm. Wow. I guess, yeah, did what was required to keep the business alive. But it sounds like a pretty important pivot. Are you continuing to service that sort of market? Do you continue? Are you still selling to landscaping businesses today, or is it more retail focused?
It's more retail focused for sure. We've
Okay.
kept like 2 wholesale customers
Right.
out of the maybe 10 that we acquired in total,
Yeah.
and they've become friends and they're easy to work with.
Mm.
And it's a one delivery a week per customer, and
Right.
they're large orders, like in the
Hmm.
AOV of 75 to $10,000 a piece.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
so even at the scale we're at now, like I'm not gonna say no to that cash flow, and
Yeah.
it's pretty easy to accommodate at this point, right? Uh,
Yeah.
Scaling that would be a logistical nightmare, but for
Yeah.
now, with the current state of our business, it's works great and it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Listen, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but I wanted to circle back and talk a little bit more about this supply chain topic, specifically from a planning, cash flow, and projections perspective. So you're selling trees, obviously, and we have a very, very short window of time every year to sell them. You mentioned 3 months or so represents about 50% of your full year revenue. And you can't just pick up a phone to a supplier and say, "Hey, I need more Maya lemon trees. Can you deliver some next week?" Like those trees had to get planted and started growing possibly years ago. And then you've got
Mhm.
Home Depot and Lowe's, who I gather are wanting a big chunk of that market. Uh, Tell me a little bit more about how you actually manage this from a planning and cash flow perspective.
Mhm. That's a good question. So, um, a few things, right? Like at the beginning, it's very challenging because you don't have historical or much historical data, especially when you're growing 100% a year. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
like, what SKUs are gonna like is that, and the SKUs don't, what we've learned, they don't grow um, at the same, individual SKUs don't always grow at the same rate as your revenue growth or our revenue growth. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and that's
Yeah.
um, the unfortunate aspect of this business is, like I mentioned many times already, you just can't manufacture a plant in
Yeah.
3 weeks. And
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure if you've come across the term, but I understand in the supermarket and grocery industry, they have the concept of loss leaders, and commonly, barbecue chickens, for example, might be a loss leader. They don't make money on it, but they sell it to get you in there in hopes that you buy other higher price or higher margin stuff. Does that same concept exist here? And is something like a Maya Lemon, potentially a candidate for being a loss leader, in that you need it to bring the customer into your ecosystem, and while they're there, they happen to boost the cart size, and you make money on the rest of the SKUs?
it's a good question. We certainly have those. My Lemon is not one of them. My Lemon has extremely high conversion rate and we have good margin, but there are absolutely products that are loss leaders. And specifically the perennial category, like um, small 1 gallon plants that are like a flowering, you know, shrub that goes dormant in the winter. Um, we don't sell them for that much money because if we did, it'd be, a rip off to the customer and it would be good value. And when you're selling an item for 20 something dollars, and our margin as a percentage is still pretty strong, but dollar margins are low, right? Like we have,
Mm-hmm.
labor costs associated with packing each box and fulfilling each order and these sort of things. And so they drive a ton of traffic. And it's, they know you exist and they know that you can
Yeah.
provide them what they ordered and it shows up how they expected it to. Um,
Mm-hmm. Got it. Got it.
but to answer the
Just
question, yeah, it exists.
just, just as a heads up, I'm having a bit of a few connection issues this end. You're pausing for like 3, 4, 5 seconds at a time. So if you see me giving you a kind of blank look, it's because I can't actually hear what you're saying, and you've paused. You actually paused for me at the beginning of that answer. So apologies in advance if you're getting some
Very
funny
good.
looks from me. Uh, okay. So Teddy, we've spoken a little bit already about some of the cash flow, the seasonality issues that you have with this business. But one thing I wanted to just touch on is your relationship with the financial statements. You mentioned to me the other day that the cash flow statement for you is more important than anything else, which is a little bit unusual for a founder. Like most founders that I work with, tend to spend a bit more of their time looking at the profit and loss statement by contrast. Tell me, why is cash your North Star, and what have you learned over the years about the difference between, I guess, looking profitable on paper versus actually having money in the bank?
Yeah, it's a good question. Um, in a business, and I would say this isn't true to all businesses, especially service-based businesses, um, where you don't have a ton of your balance sheet tied up in inventory or whatever. But um, the P&L is very helpful in getting directionally, getting information that's directionally helpful toward in terms of like your margin, right? What's your cost of shipping in relation to revenue? What's your cost of direct labor or plants or right? Any of these different things. And that's helpful. But your business is your business will die if you don't have cash flow, unless you have private equity investors or whatever. And even at that point, you'll run out eventually, right? And um, I've seen it happen to other businesses where,
Mm-hmm.
oh, we're scaling, let's buy tons of revenue or tons of inventory or whatever the case is, and then you have all this inventory type on your balance sheet. You have payables that become due, and then you have payroll, and you have all these other fixed costs, and you can run out of cash easily at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're an established business that's been around for 10 years, I'd hope you'd have it figured out. But at the beginning, I see a lot of founders get overly excited and purchase a ton of inventory they may or may not
Yeah.
need, and it really can set them back and honestly can kill a business. And
Mm.
so, knowing what you have due in terms of um, payables and knowing where all your cash is sitting, because if it's not in your bank account, it's got to be somewhere. It might be inventory, who knows where it is, right? And and at the beginning, it's so, I mean, it's like the most important thing, right? If you need cash to stay alive, and
Yeah.
without that, like you're cooked. And
Yeah.
um, the P&L is going to give you a ton of helpful information that's going to get any founder, myself included, to make, you know, strategic decisions in terms of we need to cut, a few points off, name a category, a chart of accounts or whatever, name anything, right? Anything, any line item. We can shave, 1 or 2 points here or 1 point here, or even 15 cents per bag on this by going from 4 mil bags to 2 mil bags, and those will work fine. Those are all directionally helpful things you can get from the P&L. But if without a, a healthy understanding of where your cash position is, like you're in bad shape unless you're printing money. Like if you're
Yeah.
printing money
Yeah.
right at the gate for 6 months, would be impressive.
Hmm.
Um, like you need to know your cash position. Otherwise, I mean, there's just
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
negative implications of not knowing that are so high, right?
Absolutely spot on. Sorry.
And I would love to know what you think too, because you're a finance guy, like you're a fractional
Mm,
CFO. What's your
mm,
perspective on the financial statements?
yeah. So I like to use the analogy of a performance athlete and a coach. And each of the financial statements kind of serves like a slightly different purpose. So the the idea behind a profit and loss is to kind of track your project over your progress over time. Clearly, I wouldn't be able to coach you on running the 100 meters at the Olympics if we didn't have some way to know what your time was doing and that you're actually getting better. And is there actually a correlation between the initiatives that we're rolling out, the new projects, products, things that we're doing, and your performance? So what we want to be able to see is some kind of track record that the profitability and the profit and loss statement is improving over time. Uh, Cash is like the kind of calorie or any the calories that you're consuming through food and nutrition versus the energy that you're spending. Now there can be periods of time where you can expel more energy than what you're consuming, and you'll have a net deficit, but that cannot go on for a prolonged period of time. Eventually, you will wither and die if you're not replenishing yourself with that energy from cash. And then the balance sheet is a little bit like your body mass index. It's your composition. Like, how are you made up? Like, what is the constitution of this entity, and how is it all put together? But I think you made a really, really interesting point just now about kind of the importance of cash and cash flow management and its relationship to how healthy your profit and loss statement is. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but just let me know if I heard you correctly. I think what you're explaining is that if you've got a phenomenally good profit and loss and really, really strong margins, then maybe you don't need to spend quite as much time on your cash flow statement. But a lot of people aren't that lucky. And if you've got modest margins, and especially when you've got a seasonal business like yours, there are going to be times of the year where cash is flowing in and out. And if you don't have the luxury of huge amounts of investor money, then it is probably the thing that is going to kill the business if you happen to run out of it.
Hmm.
So I get that right?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Especially for us, right? When you have when my experience is losing $50,000 of inventory right after our busy season, right? So,
Yeah.
um, my perspective
Yeah.
is partially shaped from my experience early on, and I think it's a bit different now. But at the
Yeah.
beginning, it's so important.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. Well, Teddy, we're going to need to wrap things up pretty soon. I have one question for you that I like to ask all my guests, which is what is your favorite business KPI or metric? How often do you track it and why?
It's a good question. my it's I would say my favorite KPI is like there's two because it's so meaningful to our business at this stage, but it's like our lifetime value to the ratio of our lifetime value to our customer acquisition cost, or just customer acquisition cost, because I have an idea like lifetime value is not going to change
Yeah.
daily or weekly or anything, but our CAC will change and fluctuate, and the rate and the efficiency at which we're acquiring customers directly impacts our bottom line. For example, if we're spending $300,000 a month on advertising, and we're generating, or we're doing, we're acquiring X number of customers, or we're generating X dollars in revenue, like the difference between a 3.3 and a 3.1 at a couple million bucks a month is like drastic, right? And
Yeah.
I can just look at our triple whale report and tell you like, was it a profitable day or was it not? And
Yeah.
you know,
Interesting. Well, I appreciate this perspective. And Teddy, this has been such an interesting conversation. You've got a fascinating journey that you've been on here. And I really, really respect the, I guess, sales and customer acquisition first perspective that you've taken here, and the hustle and the grind that you've put in here, man, to just figure everything else out on the back end. I see, unfortunately, a lot of founders, tackle things the other way around and build the systems and build the product and get the inventory before they've actually figured it out to how to sell it and move it in significant quantities, which is often a bit of a recipe for disaster. So, yeah, congrats on everything you've achieved here. Before I let you go, can you just share with the listeners, where should people go if they would like to learn a little bit more about you, the business, what you're up to, any favorite, social platforms or websites you want me to include in the show notes?
sure. You can find our business at simplytrees.com. Our business is Instagram, and TikTok is at Shop Simply Trees. My personal Instagram is Theodore Oitzman, which might be in the title of the video. I don't post a ton. I post a lot of stories. I don't post feed posts, but you could keep up. I post business feed stories all the time on my Instagram.
Okay, cool.
And hopefully the viewers got something out of this. And if anyone has any like personal questions, they can reach me on LinkedIn at my name or in my Instagram DM box, whatever. Happy to help or encourage or answer any questions anyone has in the future.
That's so kind of you. Really appreciate it, man. Well, thanks again for joining me on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, and I guess we'll catch up soon. Take care. Bye.
Take care, man.